So you've decided you need to replace your current car or you need to buy a new one. How much should you spend? What should you buy? And how should you finance it? These are all questions we are going to look at in more detail. Mitchell here, documenting our journey to success on Study Wealth. We're going to take a short break from the How to Save series to look at car ownership in more detail. It's still a topic up for much debate despite increasing urbanisation, increased use of ride-sharing apps, and of course the emergence of driverless vehicles. Today we're looking at how much car we can afford. So the average total cost of owning a car is about £388 a month, and that includes the cost of financing a car. But that's just the average. We can actually use a combination of rules that help us understand how much car we could afford individually. And that's what I want to help you with watching this today. You found this video because you're looking to buy a car, you need to work out how much you should spend on it, you're in the right place. A car is likely to be the second biggest purchase in your lifetime. But unlike any other purchase, a car is something that goes down in value over time. And you'll see that here, price to time. It decreases over time. It's known as a depreciating asset. Now this is quite unusual, but it doesn't stop people buying them. 80% of millennials own a vehicle and 50% of the ones that don't expect to in the next 5 years. And as you know, with Study Wealth, we like to use realistic, relatable, practical examples that are useful now for the millennial community. And that's what we're going to look at today. The first rule is that you should spend between 10, 20 and 50% of your annual income on a car depending on your circumstances. So for the average UK millennial, this is between around £2,000 to £12,000. That's great, but as we know, 60%, 59% of us actually have no savings at all. So we have to combine another rule to really understand how much car we can afford. And this rule, here's one I made earlier, is called the 24-10. 24-10, and it's that simple. 20 is a percentage and it's a 20% down payment on the vehicle. So if a vehicle was to say cost £10,000, you would put a £2,000 amount down on that vehicle. Then it's 4 years. Now this is saying you should finance the vehicle at no longer than a 4-year period. And we're going to touch on that in more detail in a moment. The last one is 10%. And 10% is your, what I like to call your monthly allocation to the vehicle. So let's say, for example, you're earning, let's just say £2,000 a month. You should not be spending any more than £200 a month on your car. On Study Wealth, when I feel like certain rules aren't financially resilient enough, I like to break the rules a little bit and change them to make them more suitable, one, to our generation, but two, so that we're more financially secure. So I've done that here, and I just want to explain it in a little bit more detail. So the changes I'm going to make are mainly to do with the 10% monthly allocation. Now this is usually looked at on a gross level. So let's say, for example, you're earning £30,000 a year, you literally just divide that by 12 and your 10% allocation is on your gross number. Now I am going to change that to make us a bit more financially secure and a bit more financially stable. It makes the rule a little bit more resilient, and it means we can afford less car, but it's more likely to save us in the long run. So I've got it a 10% allocation, and I want to call it to your net income. And when I say net income, I am talking about after taxes and your national insurance. This rule does not suggest that financing a car is the best method straight away, and you're going to find out when we look at the example later. But what it does do, it does break down, it's a further rule to the general one that we just explained on how much car you can actually afford. It nearly missed that explanation. The 10% has to include insurance as a cost on the interest and principal. And the reason why I've done that is, again, to basically make sure that you're not overspending. We are going to be looking at realistic, incredibly realistic examples of car ownership and what sort of cars we can purchase using the 24-10 rule, along with the more generalized rule of 10, 20 and 50%. So let's take a look at our millennial example so that we can get a real understanding of what the 24/10 rule is. So I've got my numbers here. So what we're going to say is we're going to say that our millennial earns gross £30,000, which means net £24,000, which equals £2,000 per month. So our millennial is earning £2,000 per month. Now, as we know, that means that the 10% allocation is going to equal £200 per month. So our millennial has £200 a month to spend on a car purchase, which should include the main purchase of the car, but also insurance. For the purpose of this example, we're going to take a blended APR rate on the average of new vehicles and the average of a second-hand vehicle. Now, the APR is quite simply just the interest rate charged on the financing if we were to finance it, and we're going to assume and I've calculated this, a blended rate of 5.3%. The important thing to note about an APR rate is that it does depend on your credit score. If you're part of this channel, I've assumed we've got good credit score. I also am going to do a video on credit score because getting this 5.3% is determined by how good your credit is. And what we're going to do, we are going to split this in half. And we are going to call this the rule breaker. So this is the millennial rule breaker. And this is millennial. And then just 24/10. Okay, so I've just got my numbers here. So excuse me if I'm looking down slightly. I just want to make sure that I'm getting all of these numbers correctly. So the millennial rule breaker has £0 down payment. Finances for 60 months, which is, as you know, 5 years. And obviously at the 5.3%. Now, this is going to be for an £8,000 car because we want to include the £200 per calendar month, has to include a roundabout insurance as well if we can fit that in. So for an £8,000 car, we're looking at that equaling £152 per calendar month, and then obviously we're going to include insurance on that as well. So for an £8,000 car, let me just write that in there. It's probably quite useful if I write how much car we're looking at. So it's an £8,000 car. We are looking at £152 a month. If you have got your millennial rule breaker who has paid no down payment, is doing it over 5 years at 5.3%, it's going to be costing them £152 per month. Now, let's take our millennial 24/10 follower. Let's call him the Study Wealth millennial. We are looking at a 20% down payment, which is for an £8,000 car is going to be £1,600. You are looking at 4 years, which is equal to 48 months, because obviously you're following the rule, and you're looking again at the same rate, which is 5.3%. This is where we get some amazing results because the monthly payment is actually £4 less a month, despite doing the loan over a year less period. So you're doing it for less than a year, 4 years, 5 years, but you're paying less monthly amount as well. Not only that, we've also got our total interest for both of them. So the total interest on the rule breaker is £1,096 interest there. Now the total interest for the millennial 24/10 follower is equal to £700 interest. So now we're really starting to notice some key differences. Saving yourself about £400 on interest by doing it over the shorter period of time and putting 20% down. And what is an amazing saver here is that you're assuming that this is a year's difference. Now in that year's difference, if the millennial 2410 follower says, okay, I own the car now, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the £148 a month extra for the year in a savings account, I'm going to save it for an extra year, you also get £1,800. So £1,800 is an extra savings you get from having an extra year of owning the vehicle. Now, you can see how it doesn't necessarily mean that financing a car is the best method. We're going to do another video on all the types of financing that you can do and what the best method may be for you, but I just want to show you an extra example here that you can put into practice. So let's take, for example, we're going to call this individual, so we've got the 2410 millennial, this is going to be the frugal millennial. Now the frugal millennial just buys a beaten up car for £2,000. So they buy a car for £2,000 in cash. It's an old beaten up car that they try and use and get value out of for 4 years. Now the calculation I've done here is that if you put save, because remember if you're following the 2410 rule, you're putting £148 a month into the car. You're spending that on the car. You're spending about £200 on that and the insurance. Now, what I've said here is that if you buy this beaten up £2,000 car, okay, you're going to save, and I've tried to account for some maintenance costs here. So I've said that you'll probably end up saving about £100 because there will be a bit of resale value in this as well, but there are going to be maintenance costs because it is an older car. So I've said you're going to save that per month. Now, by buying that car outright in cash, you're then able to save that a month into a savings account. But what I've suggested is that you put it into a balanced portfolio where I'm assuming you get a 3% return on your investments. Again, plugging another video, we are going to talk about investments. If the car lasts for 2 years, then you will have total savings of £2,500. If the car, and if you were spending that maintenance money, because I have assigned £100 a month on maintenance, it's quite a lot of money. By year 4, you will have a total of £5,000 saved. So this is following the 2410 rule. You're still following it, but what you're doing is you're not putting it into practice. Doesn't mean you're necessarily financing the car. Instead, you're doing the 20% down payment, but you're spending that on actually buying a vehicle, and then the 10% allocation minus a few maintenance costs, you're then putting away into a portfolio, investment portfolio, where you're getting a 3% return. After year 4, you're saving £5,000. That would allow you to buy a £12,000 car. So let's write that down. That would allow you to buy a £12,000 car if you followed this rule. After the 4 years, you can then buy a £12,000 car by following the 2410 rule. Or, of course, you can then buy yourself a car for £5,000, upgrading your current vehicle because you're going to get a bit of a resale value on that also as well. So this is, and it's really quite a sort of generalized rule, but it's a great way to show you how much car you can actually afford to buy. If you got value from today's video, please subscribe to this channel and click that like button. I really appreciate the support, and I would also love some debate in the comments section. I know with car ownership, it's a hot topic, and so I'm expecting some people to disagree with the assumptions I have made. Don't forget, on Study Wealth, it's a journey to success. Thanks for watching.